Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to offering news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, 2nd February of 2022. Benedict XVI has reaffirmed that he had nothing to do with the pastoral assignment of the pedophile priest who was welcomed in Munich during his term in office. Cardinal Ruini has been among the few who have come out in defense of Benedict XVI, rejecting any involvement of Benedict XVI in the protection of pedophiles. Cardinal Holrich is in support of the ordination of women to the diaconate, which is the first step towards the female priesthood, although he believes that the moment is not yet. German priests and lay people, supported by their bishops, have published a manifesto in which they declare that they are and practice homosexuality. Benedict XVI has nothing to do with the assignment of pastoral duties to the pedophile priest in Munich. He was no longer Archbishop of the diocese when it happened.
Benedict XVI has rectified his statement that he was not present at a meeting of diocesan officials on January 15, 1980, for which he apologizes for that editing error. He reaffirms by referring to the archives that the pastoral assignment of the priest in question was not decided at this meeting and therefore remains factually correct. In a statement distributed by his secretary, Bishop Ganswein, the Pope Emeritus again expresses his solidarity with the victims and admits that, contrary to what he said during the audience, he participated in the meeting of January 15, 1980, where it was decided to accept the pedophile priest for treatment in the Archdiocese of Munich. However, it was years later, when Ratzinger had already been appointed prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, that the priest's recovery was terminated and he resumed his pastoral activities.
Benedict XVI not only did not support pedophile priests, but he was the one who did the most to end this evil, said Cardinal Ruini.
Cardinal Camillo Ruini has assured that the accusations launched against the Pope Emeritus are absurd and is convinced that Joseph Ratzinger would never have become Pope Benedict XVI if his conscience had reproached him for anything. We all know that Ratzinger did as a cardinal, then as Pope and then as Pope Emeritus, to eliminate that horrible scourge that is clerical pedophilia. Unfortunately, in Germany, there is a great current within the Church against the theological orientations of the Pope Emeritus. Such a climate contributes to making possible accusations that would otherwise have difficulty finding space. The Italian cardinal finds parallels between the Ratzinger case and what happened to Cardinals Pell and Barberin, both accused, sentenced, and finally declared innocent. I know Cardinal Pell very well, and we are united by a great friendship. What happened to him was very serious, but God's providence knew how to draw much good from his story. His diary from prison is an extraordinary message of love for the Church and trust in God. I know Cardinal Barberin less, but I also have a great appreciation for him, and his story is also emblematic. Finally, the Cardinal said that the Church must bring to light the truth about past events, but without making the mistake of falling into the game of her enemies. Investigations must be truly independent. The Church must have the courage of the truth even when it is a very painful truth, but she must also have the wisdom not to self-injure, not to set up machines that actually work against her.
Bishop Holrich, who presides over all the European bishops, have supported the ordination of women as deacons, although he believes that we will have to wait a little longer.
Cardinal Hollerich of Luxembourg has given an interview in which he warns that although he would agree if the Pope were to accept the ordination of married men and deaconesses, the Church would be in grave danger of schism. The Jesuit cardinal, who will play a central role in the 2023 Synod because the Pope has appointed him as its rapporteur, has said that the reforms in the Catholic Church require a solid base. In a wide-ranging interview published in the February issue of the German magazine Herder Correspondence, the cardinal was asked if he could foresee the ordination of women as deaconesses. After all, says the cardinal, it is not only about the German situation where perhaps only a small part would separate. In Africa or in countries like France, many bishops would possibly disagree.
A group of German priests and lay people have published a manifesto admitting their practice of homosexuality. It has been endorsed by their bishops.
Several bishops in Germany have welcomed a wide-ranging LGBT media campaign involving German priests and church workers, accusing the Catholic Church of defending defamatory teachings on gender and sexuality. Church teaching must change on the issue of homosexuality and gender identity, and the German synodal way is the right way to achieve this. That was the message of diocese and church associations on January 24th on the occasion of the Out in Church campaign. The German Bishops' Conference, through the Bishop of Aachen, has welcomed the campaign. He has said that it is a sign that we are working to ensure that this climate of freedom without fear develops in our church. The Diocese of Essen, for its part, announced that it supported the #OutInChurch initiative. So did the Bishop of Osnabrück, who called the campaign a courageous step by 125 homosexual employees of the Catholic Church throughout the country. He also called for a change in labor legislation. According to Bode, the synodal path could provide a reliable solution. Several other dioceses have supported the campaign, although the most significant was that of Hamburg, whose bishop is implicated in accusations of protecting pedophile priests. For this bishop to say that the practice of homosexual is a sin is defamatory.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to comment on the pro-abortion campaign of some politicians who want to transform it into a human right.
A classical political strategy is to take advantage of certain situations, circumstances of great tensions, to approve other laws that under normal conditions would generate turmoil, unrest, and even a strong rejection. This is happening right now. The world's attention is focused on what is happening in Ukraine. It may happen, it may be that it is the beginning of a third world war. It is said that the country will be invaded, razed to the ground, the capital Kiev sacked. The whole world is looking at Ukraine, and in the meantime, the culture of death is taking steps towards its total dictatorship. In the European Union, the rule is that every 6 months the ruler of one of the member countries holds the presidency. It is a rotating presidency. Since January 1st, this position has been held by French President Macron. In his inaugural speech while taking office as president, Macron said that he wants to turn abortion into a right, and that he wants it to be considered as one of the essential elements of what he called European values. Abortion as a right, what does it mean? It means that nobody can dissent, nobody can criticize it, nobody can make conscientious objection. How are you going to deal with the right A conscientious objection prevented for people, for example, health personnel, but also for institutions, Catholic hospitals. Those who oppose a right will be treated as criminals. I don't know if with the same harshness with which terrorists are treated, but of course they will be treated as criminals. In Spain, for example, it is no longer possible to pray in front of an abortion clinic, at least in a group, because it is forbidden by law. We'll see how it is applied, but there is already a law that forbids it. The culture of death is taking steps inexorably and places the church, not only the church, but certainly the church, in an increasingly difficult situation. Or she adapts or will end up being considered an unstable element or producer of instability, an element or an institution contrary to human rights, with all the consequences, both for the institution that will lose its legal formation and for people who refuse to accept not only abortion, but it and all its courtship, euthanasia, or the rights, the alleged rights of the LGBT community. There is a theory called the boiled frog theory. According to this theory, you put the frog in a bowl or in a pot of boiling water and the frog jumps immediately. But if you put it in a pot in the pan with cold water and you go very slowly making the water warm, the frog gets used to it and ends up staying cooked to stay boiled. Well, this is what they have been doing with society in general in the whole area of the culture of death. And now the addition of LGBT laws, this is what they have been doing, and there is already a majority of society that has accepted all this as something normal. What until recently, and I think many of my age have known, was a crime, abortion as a crime was punished, became something, well, tolerated to become, that's what they want, a right to which no one can protest, no one can oppose. Little by little, the frog has become accustomed to the water that was being heated. Society has become numb. It's been accepting things that before it would have absolutely rejected, and this is also happening within the church. The majority of Catholics, the few practicing Catholics that are left, are older. They don't want to have problems. They don't want complications. They are more and more in that process of the boiled frog, becoming numb people who do not care about anything as long as they are allowed to do their routines. And even if they are not allowed with excuse of the COVID, they also adapt themselves. A proof of this is what is happening in the church in Germany. They do things that instead of generating a universal rejection by the hierarchy and the faithful, only awakens in some daring a criticism. The vast majority is increasingly accepting their thesis, supported even by a part of the hierarchy or the media. A few days ago, in response to Macron's statements, the brilliant, excellent secretary of the Spanish Episcopal Conference said that the church had been founded by Jesus Christ as the salt of the earth and not as the sugar of the world. He's right. Salt of the earth, said the Lord, light of the world, yeast in the dough, and not sugar for the coffee. But we have to prepare people for that, and we have to be willing to pay the price. Are we preparing the few remaining practicing Catholics to be the salt of the earth? To pay the price of being marginalized because we do not want to give in? Or, on the contrary, is the church slowly transforming herself into one more element of the system that serves to numb the consciences of the citizens, that is to say, so that the frog stays quietly in the pot while it boils? There is very little time left. The frog has very little chance of jumping out of the pot and saving itself because it's almost completely asleep. We are called to be the salt of the earth and not the sugar in the coffee. It is a brilliant comparison, but are we really preparing ourselves? Are we being taught what it means? Are we willing to pay the price of what it means to be faithful to Jesus Christ rather than becoming a piece of the system, which on the other hand will end with us if we accommodate ourselves to what the world asks of us? Let us ask the Lord to help us for our own good and for the mission we have to do with others. Until next week, God willing.
If you would like to keep up to date with what is happening in the church, you can visit our news page, www.magnificat TV. See you next week, God willing.